Woo, 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 woo. Hi everyone, Anthony Pants Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Ibibio Sound Machine album, Doko Mien. The endlessly groovy Ibibio Sound Machine, they are back with their third full-length album, second for Merge Records. They are a group that hails from London and is fronted by singer Eno Williams. The band began to start turning heads in the middle of this decade as a new face on the amazing Soundway Records label, which usually specializes in uncovering lost musical gems on the international scene through compilations that cover everything from Panamanian funk to Thai jazz. Ibibio's sound, though, borrows heavily from the world of old-school Afrobeat, which of course made them a good fit for the label, but they were very much updating this style of music by fusing it with the sounds of electro and new wave, which for me is a pretty exciting proposition. But the group's debut album was a little gray, kind of one-dimensional. The performances were there, the energy was there, the fusion of genres was there, but not so much the songs, and the production was just a little flat. When the band eventually made it over to Merge Records and got a better recording for their follow-up record a few years later, they delivered a handful of tracks that were way more lush and punchy and detailed. Aside from a few lulls and duds in the track list, pretty much everything I wanted out of an Ibibio Sound Machine album turned up on this record. So a couple of years later, here we are with the group's next offering, Doko Mien, and we're essentially seeing the band bring a few more sounds, a few more genres into the fold, but with some mixed results, I guess. Of course, there are some true blue, funky, Afrobeat bangers on this thing. The song Tell Me, with its driving drum beat and pulsating synth bass, as well as its rhythmic embellishments, feels like a great cross-section of Afrobeat music and new wave. Certainly nothing new for Ibibio, but a track that can go toe-to-toe with the group's best bangers up until this point. Eno herself is caught in the whirlwind of all this groovy instrumentation and vocally is essentially just riding the rhythmic wave, dropping in these cool little quick vocal riffs that kind of play off of the instrumental. And when the horns come in on this thing, it's over. It's a jam! Wanna Come Down, also a highlight on here, sees the group rocking a pretty classic synth-funk groove. Eno on top, bringing her usual blend of English and Ibibio lyrics. The track essentially sounds like a giant cross-cultural dance party. The intro track on this thing isn't bad either. It might have a more measured groove than that of many other songs on this record, but there's such a cool cross-section of sounds on this thing. The rigidly sequenced synths, the classic soul girl group background vocals, the multi-dimensional drums, the psychedelic guitar solo. Also, Eno drops one of the best hooks on this thing, I need you to be sweet like sugar, which in a way kind of reminds me of the flow and the pacing of Grandmaster Flash's The Message. Don't push me, 'cause I'm close to the edge. So there are a lot of hard-hitting, groovy, and danceable highlights on this thing. Where Doko Mien actually ends up faltering is in pretty much exactly the same places that Ibibio's last full-length album faltered. You have flimsy ballads and mellow cuts on this thing that aren't really all that well written, and they're not complemented all that well in the linear fashion with which the band performs and writes their tunes, getting lost more in the drive and the direction and the groove of a track than the composition of it. So yeah, I think some of the mellow cuts on here could use a bit more restructuring, better writing, sharper choruses. And in these contexts on the album where Eno's voice is left with a lot more space to work with, rarely does her singing actually stun. Especially on the track Guess We Found a Way, where her singing just sounds like really bad karaoke, even if I do like the instrumental kickoff of the song, which sounds like an interesting combination of neo-soul and some euphoric psychedelic rock from Australia. And just like on the last record, Ibibio pops in a couple of tracks that feel less like finished songs and more like just, I don't know, random ideas that weren't developed all that far, but they made it onto the album anyway. I mean, in a way it does feel like I'm listening to the same album over again, but in sort of a diminished capacity. Granted, there are a few added genre fusions that didn't make it onto the last album. The 8th track on here is probably the furthest the band has ever drifted from any Western music influences ever. And I'm also loving how the band included all of these jazz pianos on Basquiat. But still, even with this, I can't say Ibibio has necessarily improved upon their sound or their style or their ability to craft an album in any significant way from a few years ago to now. It's still not a bad record. The jams are incredible. They alone make this album very much worth your time, even if some of the deep cuts on this thing are a little awkward or underwhelming. I'm feeling a light to decent 7 on this thing. Tran. Zishin, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is a video that you can check out. Hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Ibibio Sound Machine, forever.